Well, hi, everyone, and thank you for joining me. This is Kim Grable, and I'm your instructor for sketching for designers. This is module 3 of the summer quarter term, and this shouldn't take very long, but I do want to go through all the assignments that you have due this particular week. It's not a huge amount, but it's actually might be kind of fun to do this. You're going to be primarily doing, again, sketching. Um, and the focus this week is on composition. And composition just means building blocks or the way you build a an audio production, a video production, a sketch, a brochure, whatever it is that you're building. Um, Module 3, Assignment 1 is placement sketches. Talk about that in just a moment. Picture book placement is number 2, Assignment 2. Doodle sketches is Assignment 3. And then you've got a live classroom question to answer. That's further along in your Blackboard based class information. So again, I go through and mention why sketching matters in design. Um, when you, I don't know how far along you are in your graphic design education. I assume you're fairly early, but one thing you're going to have to do as simply part of becoming a designer is sketch your ideas. And depending on who you have as far as an instructor and what you're trying to achieve, a lot of instructors basically say, I want, say, for a logo design, I want 50 sketches or 20 sketches or whatever it happens to be. Um, at a school where I used to teach, I taught on ground for almost 12 years at a university, actually, University of North Texas in Denton, Texas. Um, and we required 200 sketches before we said, yeah, this is good. Let's look at everything and decide if you've got something here. A lot of students ended up having to do 400 sketches. And at some point, you're just sort of going through the motions. I know you can go too much. Uh, in this particular instance, you're not concerned necessarily with your sketching abilities or your drawing skills. This is a thinking tool. You're thinking about the composition you're putting together. It's built, or it's intended to be built, as a quick, very low pressure exploration of ideas. And it does help you visualize composition before committing to details, and it helps visualize space, form, and proportion. And I will tell you, I've been a designer for a long time and uh, and an illustrator. And if you jump in and just start from scratch, you end up moving backwards. It's pure experience. Um, at some point, you realize that you're kind of beating your head against the wall, and you go ahead and you go through the placement sketches or the basic shape sketches. And then you get to where you need to be a lot quicker. This is one of the things you're going to draw today or whenever you do module 3. This is a placement setting and it's got some rocks. As you can see, it's got a putty knife, a trowel, and a drag. I don't know what this is, but it drags across usually clay or concrete or whatever you're working with to smooth it out. And what you're going to be doing is capturing the basic shapes of these items. And you've really got one, oh, two, three, four, five. And the key here is capturing the basic shape. Okay? Look at the edge of the trowel. This is a trowel. It's a triangle. And see how the edge curves into the handle? The triangle lies under the float, the rectangle. This is a float. And the first brick is behind the trowel. So you see some dimensionality here. You see some foreground, background being formed by the placement of these tools. And then the edge of the putty knife kind of almost goes off to the edge of the image area, and it looks like it's resting on this rock, and the knife is kind of slipped under the front edge of the trowel. So when you look at this, you kind of say those things in your head about where things are, and then you draw it, and you draw it quickly. Uh, you don't want to belabor the drawing. You just want to make a sketch. And whoever looks at the sketch can say, okay, this is a trowel. This is a float that's sort of resting on top of the trowel. There's a rock back here, and it looks like there may be a rock back here as well, where the putty knife is leaning. But then you've got to look also that the trowel is leaning against the putty knife. Okay, and that's all you have to do. It's not asking for an explanation. It's just telling you what you just drew. And that's basically your first assignment on Module 3 is sketching, but sketching well enough that you can identify these objects. I'm having no trouble at all identifying the sketch as these different objects. And so that's what you have to do. Sure, it's kind of a rough outline on the sketch, but you show where the elements are in space on the page. If they're grouped together, are they focused? Are they balanced? And actually, they are pretty well balanced. You're working on spatial balance rather than detail. Now, if I said, let's draw this out and make a piece of art from it, then you would get very detailed and you would put in a light source so you could have shadows and cast shadows and highlights. But that's not what we're doing here. We're sketching for spatial focus of the balance of these five pretty heavy objects. So again, definition of a line sketch, rough outline that show where elements sit on a page or a poster, or in this case, a photograph. There's your original photograph. Okay? And the purpose is to test scale, alignment, spacing, and communicate early ideas very clearly. This trowel is dead center in the middle and is really taking up the most preponderance of spaces here. This float is probably the second largest object, and then the putty knife is perhaps third, with the rocks forming a background. So you're after capturing the shape accurately and the placement of each of the shapes. And you want that placement to be accurate as well. So some key tips when you're drawing this: start with shapes, break it down to its very, very basic of shapes, then think hierarchy. Biggest element equals the focal point. Keep flexible. Don't over detail. You'll have plenty of time to add details later. Right now, you're observing the shapes, you're breaking them down into the triangles and the rectangles and the cylinders and the squares. And then beginning with those basic shapes, you need to pay attention to just looking at. I have a cat that just walked by. I just wanted to be sure he was okay. Uh, Try to begin with those basic shapes, paying attention to what is in the front, what is behind, what is the furthest thing away, the closest thing to you, the viewer. Okay, that is assignment one. Assignment two is a little more, a little bit of work, but it's not really that much work. We're going to build a picture book placement. This is considered a very simple composition, one that you might see in a children's book. Okay? Children's books use very simple shapes that actually add to the narrative of the story they're telling. Um, when the child reads the text and then looks at the photo is complementing the text. It's illustrating what the child's reading. You're going to create a children's illustration that uses simple shapes and an overlapping layout. Doesn't sound difficult at all. Okay. And this is your primary shape that you'll be working with. So the definition of a picture book placement is sketching spread for books. Do you know what a spread is? A spread is if you open a book and you have a spine down the middle where the two pages are connected. That spine is basically the edge of both pages that are open. Do you see what I'm saying? Most children don't turn a picture book unless both pages are open. So you're going to create a two-page layout. And to do that, I'll show you how to do it. But uh, sketching these spreads for books will test the story flow, and it also will test the reader's eye movement. And you have to, or you want to, establish rhythm between text and imagery. Balance negative space. Negative space is the space around an illustrated object versus the illustrated self, illustration itself, excuse me. And then ensure pacing matches your narrative arc. What's your narrative arc? Uh, you're going to be drawing the three little pigs as a spread, and this is one of the pigs that you can use. And basically, a narrative arc is the story of that particular children's book. I think it's one pig builds a house of straw and, all that kind of stuff. You don't have to necessarily add text or anything. You're just adding the imagery. Okay. All right. So your key composition tools for this include rule of thirds. What's the rule of thirds? Keep action dynamic. Here's the rule of thirds. We've got, if we took this spread and divided it into thirds, then you'd have probably a pig in the background, in the in the farthest background, maybe next to a house of brick or whatever. And then you've got a mid-range pig, or right in the mid, also in front of this pig, but not in front of the primary pig, which is right here. Do you see the difference? That's when you actually respect and draw the rule of thirds. Page turns. Remember that you want to hold design suspense and calm moments. And visual anchors will actually help the reader where he should go or she should go as they read the book. This is straw. This is, I think, the other one made of wood or sticks. And then there were bricks. So you can see some of the elements of the building. And primarily, you want to focus on the three pigs. This is a two-page spread example right here with rough rectangles for text. I don't know that I would necessarily worry about text at all. Your rough rectangle should be only elements of the visual image, okay? Uh, you're not going to put in your reading flow necessarily, but you could. And this is your basic primary overlay or your drawing are these three guys in a hierarchical arrangement. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. And you can use the pig that's in the first part. Let me go back just so you remember. Okay. I have downloaded all of this so that you can grab it out of the Module 3 folder, and then you'll just have it if you need to trace it or whatever you need. Module 3, Assignment 3, is doodle sketches or composition focus. Doodle sketches are free form sketches. In the old days, before smartphones and before we had this tether, this invisible tether to our phones, there were such a thing as house line phones or um, lines in a person's house or home where um, that was paired with the house. You had to be in the house to make a phone call. Same was true in the early 90s with car phones. Uh, but now everything is, you have to, go to your smartphone for everything. But when you had to sit in a chair or lay on the floor or, sit on a couch holding a phone, like the thing you speak into, uh, a lot of times if you had paper and a pencil, you would doodle things that maybe just jumped into your mind as you're talking. And that's what this doodle art is really all about. It's like free flow thinking. It's informal, spontaneous drawings that explore composition energy. And these are the things that you have to draw in your doodle sketch. And I have one down here for you. Doodle sketches can be literally anything, but you have to stay within these parameters up here. Um, I do when I'm doodling or sketching, I do letter forms because, well, I'm boring, but I'm fascinated with letter forms. So I make L's and M's and Z's and all that kind of stuff. A lot of people do this and they make various little drawings. And uh, this is not overthinking. It's just sort of letting your creative flow just sort of have at it. Reveal natural shapes, patterns, and focal points, and you generate actually really unexpected layout ideas. So this is a good thing to do. And again, I'll put these little examples that I have for you. I'll put them in your Module 3 folder if you need them. Tips for this are basically use doodles to discover movement in composition, cluster versus scatter, similar to a still life When you do a still life of objects, you cluster those objects very close together. Um, or you can scatter them. That's no longer a still life, it's just a scattering of objects. This tests the density of elements. And then play with diagonals and spirals and curves. I think up here there's some, little spiral looking things. Play with shapes, play with uh, just anything like this, just kind of spinning out. Um, Anything that pops into your head, draw it, basically. But try to stay within those parameters that I've outlined for you. Compositional or composition principles that you will apply or that you'll see is balance, symmetry versus asymmetry, hierarchy, focal point first, supporting elements second, movement, eye flow across the page, proportion, big versus small, white space or negative space, breathing room for clarity, say around an object. And how this works is basically you start with placement sketches to define a layout. And then you expand to picture book and story spreads. That tests your narrative flow. Then you explore further with doodle sketches that hopefully sparks your creativity. And then you'll refine with composition rules, essentially bringing structure and clarity to these free-form drawings that you're going to do this week. Okay? Now, again, sketching is about thinking visually. It is not about perfection. Placement is structure. Picture book spreads, rhythm and narrative. Doodles are spontaneity plus creativity. And then the whole composition is the glue that holds it all together. And that's basically what you're doing this particular week. Let me remind you also that there's a live discussion question that you can answer, if you would, please. It's a big 5 points you don't want to lose. Um, and this is pretty much what you have. I will post this recording in hopefully just a few minutes. And I'll also add those images to your Module 3 folder. Remember, if you have any questions, you can text me at 817-239-0360. You can send me a message or you can email me. And I usually take the longest to get to an email, just simply because if you really need to reach me quicker, message or especially a text message. Be sure to tell me your name if you're sending a text message. All right, so that is all I have for today. Have a good week, and this will be posted very soon, and I'll send out an announcement telling you when it's ready. Thank you, and we'll talk soon.